Using these fast, low-risk, hidden loot spots, I've found blueprints, renegades, bobcats, volcanoes, torrentes, ospreys, just about every epic, rare, and powerful weapon you can think of, and best of all, there's nearly no risk. What's up guys, Smith here, and today I want to show you some hidden loot locations on Dam that you can incorporate into your daily matches. We're going to go over the preparation, the execution, the cleanup, and the extraction. By the time you finish this video, you should be leaving every match on Dam with at least 1 or 2 awesome weapons to add to your definitely not full stash. Apologies if I sound a bit hoarse and breathy today, I've got tonsillitis, so I'm going to get through this as best I can, but please bear with me. This method works in both solo and group play, but is easier, safer, and more beneficial for solo players. Mostly because you don't need to share loot with friends, and players are typically less aggressive in solo lobbies. Typically, don't hold me to that, but typically. I'm going to show you each of these locations individually, but they are easily incorporated into a loot run if that's your preferred style of play. Personally, I don't recommend doing that. Loot runs are dangerous. Your objective and attention is 100% dedicated to achieving a very specific loot-orientated goal. In my experience, this often leads to bad decisions and encounters that would otherwise be avoided. Having an entire run resting on whether or not you extract after 25 minutes of tedious looting opens up a lot of frustrating outcomes, whereas incorporating these into regular matches has a better payoff. When you spawn in, just have a quick look at where you're at. You'll know the locations in this video by the end of it. If you're nearby, grab a couple. If you're running past them during a match, just take a quick look. This gives you a net positive on guns almost every round, increasing your arsenal and giving you more opportunities to load into Stellar Montis with a 50,000 coin loadout, so you can die to the very first team you encounter and start the process all over again. In the interest of transparency and not wasting your time with false promises and clickbait thumbnails, this is among the worst runs I did when I hit every spot in a single session. I have run this route as a route, despite saying that's not the best way to do it, countless times, and maybe encounter players 1 in 15. It's all very much on the outskirts, and if you've got any experience on the Dam Battlegrounds map, you'll know the areas that are going to be slightly questionable, and you can just take a slightly longer route around and avoid players almost entirely. So for the preparation, as always, when following YouTube videos, I recommend trying this completely naked to begin with. You risk losing nothing and can confirm the information in the video is fair and accurate. I'm not going to call out names or anything, but the level of misinformation and false promises surrounding YouTube content creators and ARC raiders is staggering. It's really, really bad. A naked run, unlike a free loadout run, gives you a safe pocket so you can always leave the match with at least your most valuable item, and then if something goes wrong, you don't hate me as much because you haven't lost anything. Otherwise, it's probably best to go in with basic supplies that you are comfortable replacing. I do not suggest a free loadout for this due to the lack of a safe pocket. If you load in with just the very basics of loot and you get a bobcat or a tor or anything that's remotely useful, you'll net positive, whereas if you come in without that safe pocket, you run the risk of losing everything. A basic loot in Mark 1 costs 6 plastic and 6 rubber. With a light shield, that's an extra 2 arc alloys and 4 plastic. From there, just select a weapon you're comfortable with. Personally, I'm confident I can avoid arc 95% of the time, so I would bring a weapon on the small chance of encountering players, either a low-level kettle or a stitcher. Most of these areas, you're not going to be encountering a lot of the fireballs and stuff, so you don't have to worry too much about those. You just have to be smart when you're trying to avoid the flying arc. The goal of this run is to leave with rare and epic weapons. The benefits of such are drastically reduced if you're bringing rare and epic weapons to achieve this. So learn the route first, master locations, and then add them to future runs regardless of whatever gear you're going in with. As an added tip, if you bring something with more than 1 safe pocket, store your medical supplies in there. I like to bring 5 shield recharges and 5 bandages into every match, but I rarely find I use more than 2 in a single encounter. Just remember, whether you're 25 minutes into a run or loading into a fresh match, your safe pockets should never be empty. Right, let's get on to the locations. So for the first one, we're on the northeast section of the map. There is a Raider's Nest here that this is probably one of the lower spawn rates. I'm going to go over the sort of success rate of each of them as we go through. This one's probably 50-50. I've found it here a couple of times, but it's also not here sometimes. So just jump up the side here. When you get to this last little bit, as you jump, hold forward and then press jump again, and he should vault up to the top. You will sometimes find a medical bag and a weapon crate up here. As I said, of all the locations, this is probably the lowest rate to spawn. Most of the other ones are there more times than not. This one's a bit rarer, so do check it out, but if you struggle with the jumps, don't stress too much about this particular structure. Moving on, we're going to go slightly southeast, just a short distance to the edge of a broken highway section. This one needs a little bit of parkour love on here. You need to hang off the edge, so walk backwards slightly and press X to hang. You will then need to press roll or circle on PlayStation to drop, and then X to hang again. If you watch my other video on these, you will know the value of these parkour skills. I highly recommend going through the practice range and figuring out how those work. They win me fights, they help me escape arc. It is really useful to be able to know how your character can move around without doing all the sweaty stuff. So, good chance under here. This one appears most of the time, so make sure you check this one out. Relatively close to several spawns as well. Just a small distance southwest from that one, we have this random structure in the middle of the red swampy area. There's always arc in here, the remnants of arc, the first world stuff, so they're worth looking at. And there's also a weapon case in here with a relatively high spawn rate. I see this one here quite a bit. Then just moving further deeper into the swamp, I almost didn't include this one because this one is probably the rarest of the bunch. I've only seen it here, maybe 2 times out of 7 or 8 tests for this particular location. There's not a high rate of it being here, but you need to run through this large concrete tube out to the other side. This is probably the highest contestable area. You are sort of approaching player locations now. There's sometimes a medical bag here, and in the far corner, you will sometimes find a weapon crate. I'm just showing you a run here, so I'm not giving you a perfect situation. Sometimes you will find these, and sometimes you won't. This is one of the particular locations where the spawn rate does seem incredibly low, and I assume it's just because it is a high path area, right? There's lots of players coming in and out of here for many different reasons, so I think the ones more off the beaten track are going to be more successful for getting better loot. So moving on now, we are all the way to the south, near the testing annex, just to the southeast. Again, a couple of spawns right near this location. Make sure you check those towers during the blooming events. There's always baskets, or a good chance for baskets up there. But you can also find a weapon case on the back of the truck down here. I assume that won't be there if an enemy spawns there, so that might be determining where some of these crates appear. From there, we are heading a small distance to the southwest. There is another raider structure here. This one is a really good spawn. It's sort of similar to the other one, the way you have to climb up, but I found that most of the time I check this location, there is a weapon crate here at the very least. So same as before, to jump up, you will sometimes find medical bags and grenade tubes, so make sure you check out those. They do have a chance to spawn blueprints and all sorts of stuff, so I like the duffel bags, I call them blueprint bags, the medical bags, the weapon crates, and the grenade ones. I find some of my best loot in those, so make sure you check all of the area out when you reach these locations. And then we'll move on to the next one, which is just to the southwest here at this strange structure. I always forget what it's called, and I can't see it on the map right now. This one's the same. Grenade bags, ammo bags, blueprint bags, medical bags, and the odd weapon crate. So this one's really worth checking into. I bought a pair of binoculars for this one. I'll show you why in a second. You might not need to, but make sure you get this medical bag and check inside this little building here as well. Sometimes that's where the weapon crate spawn. I bought the binoculars because there is another one, and this is the only one on the list that requires equipment. You will need either a snap hook or a zip line to reach this location. I'm using the binoculars from a distance to check which tower the weapon crate is on. I've only seen it on once, but my cousin has assured me it spawns on multiple ones, and I trust him without question. So it's always a good idea to get up high and see if you can find which one it's at. Otherwise, you're going to need to use 2 pretty much every time unless you guess right. It's a 33% chance to guess. If you get it wrong, you're going to have to zip line to one of the other ones. And in the interest of efficiency and saving materials, it's best just to run up to that location and have a look first. It's better anyway because there's loot up there too, and then you can be sure you're only going to use the one zip line. Alternatively, if you've got the safe pocket and you've got the snap hook device from the quests, you can bring that in, use that, and just put it in your safe pocket. I really want to get used to that, but I'm so terrified of losing it all the time. So here's the weapon crate here. There is also another small structure on the ground level that you don't need anything to get up to. This one right here that Phil is showing. You can climb on these little containers to the right there, and there's sometimes a grenade tube or a medical bag at the top there as well. Moving on to the last location. This is probably the second least common spawn out of this whole list, along with the one inside the big concrete tube. It's another one of those raider structures, but it is a right pain in the bum to climb because you have to jump past this big metal tube, spin, and grab. It's really quite complicated, quite annoying, quite fidgety. I wouldn't stress this one too much unless you've had a complete bummer of a run and you've got nothing to really show for it. But as with all the other structures that look like this, there is a chance for a weapon crate and bags to appear at the top. I can't stress enough, whenever you see these structures, even if you don't climb them, always look inside. They are almost always full of useful bits and pieces, not necessarily the massive epics and the cool stuff you want, but the basic supplies and really cool items that are really useful. So make sure you always check these structures out. I do get to the top eventually in this one. Unfortunately, there was no spawn, but as I said, this one is probably one of the lowest on the list. The cleanup on this particular method depends on your approach. If you're simply incorporating a few of these spots into your runs, you should be good to go. However, if you're doing it as a route, I've found it typically takes 15 to 20 minutes depending on players, arc, events, etc. At this point, most players have left the lobby, so it's relatively safe to explore higher risk areas. I say relatively safe. Walking blindfolded across a motorway at 3 AM is safer than doing it during rush hour, but it would still be pretty stupid to do it and not expect the odd articulated lorry. So just make a decision here whether you want to keep looting or leave, but the cleanup is relatively simple because you haven't really interacted with much of the map, so you can either just leave or try and look for other locations. The extraction, this is one of the downsides to this particular method. If you're using it as a route, you are likely to be left with a single extraction location or maybe one with just a couple of minutes left. I probably don't need to tell you how often these are camped by the type of people who set fire to bugs with magnifying glasses and don't return their trolley at the supermarket. If you're confident with the route or just doing regular runs, Raider keys are relatively inexpensive, and I've yet to encounter players while using one ever. In 200 hours of gameplay, I've never had an issue at any of the extractions on the Raider keys. So do consider bringing those in. If you've got a bit of spare cash and you've got the extra safe pockets, it is worth bringing one in with you. Obviously, if you're doing this at night, don't worry too much about the Raider key. With maybe one or two exceptions, these loot locations have weapon crates, blueprint bags, and medical bags more often than not. It's not unrealistic to leave with 3 or 4 epic weapons or rare weapons, but you will have the odd run where you're full of Berlettas, anvils, and arpeggios. Blueprints, while not common, do appear in the bag sometimes, so make sure you keep an eye out for those. At all of these locations, don't just go for the weapon case that I've selected. These areas have a higher chance of spawning good loot. I'm pretty confident in that, so just make sure while you're there, just have a quick look around and grab any other bags and items you might find. If you've watched to the end, I cannot thank you enough, and I really, really mean that. I love making these longer videos, but YouTube very rarely pushes them. It pushed our last one, and you guys were fantastic in your response. We really appreciate it. So if you've got this point in the video, please do like, please do leave a comment. It really helps push the video out. If you've got any questions, let me know below and I'll get back to you. And any suggestions, I had some fantastic life-saving suggestions in that last one. By all means, share your wisdom down below and help all the players out. See you in the next one.